It's the art of the deal, folks. Washington edition. The president is taking a bipartisan tone on recent issues. But are Democrats intentionally making it blow up in its face? Also, Bernie Sanders has told the truth. Finally. Unfortunately, it's the Bernie Sanders from 30 years ago. We begin there right now.
All you have to do is stay a minute, just stay. It's time, the clock is ticking, so stay. All you have to do is wait a second, your hands on mine. The clock is ticking, so stay. All you have to do is stay.
The center for everything that is political and American. You're listening to the Garrison Douglas Show.
Welcome to the program, everyone. Let's talk for a moment, okay, shall we? Can we do this? Let's talk for a moment about Bernie Sanders. Senator Bernard Sanders. He's infected our country with socialist fever. And millennials are riding this wave of free junk from sea to shining sea. So what is Senator Sanders up to right now? Well, he just recently released his proposal for a Medicare for all healthcare system. He released this on Wednesday. Boy, it's a doozy, folks. And when I say it's a doozy, I mean it. Do you guys remember how you felt when you heard for the first time that the new iPhone was going to cost $1,000? I know how I felt. I can only speak for myself, but I know how I felt. I felt disoriented. Like, I was thinking to myself, what is the point of having a $1,000 phone? At least that's what I was thinking at the time. Now I'm actually considering getting the iPhone 10. I don't know about you guys. It looks cool. I like some of the features on it. Only thing is, I'm trying to win a debate between me and my wallet, so that my wallet will let me get it. That's the big thing. But that's another story for another day. All right. But like I said, I felt disoriented at the price tag of the iPhone 10. So, if you felt disoriented, just like I did, from that price tag from the iPhone 10, well, get a load of the price tag for Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All program. The estimate from the Urban Institute for his proposal, you ready for this, folks? Hold on to your seats. $3.2 trillion a year, or $32 trillion over 10 years. You heard me right, folks. $3.2 trillion a year, or $32 trillion over 10 years. To put that into perspective for you, the entire U.S. budget is $3.8 trillion. And that budget comes with over $500 billion worth of deficit spending. So Medicare for all would cost $3.2 trillion. And our current budget for everything military, Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, food stamps, everything. $3.8 trillion. Let's break that down even more. Because I know Democrats complain quite a lot that we spend way too much money on military. Our military expenditures are through the roof. We spend more than our next such and such allies combined. Well, let's take a look at how much we spend on the military. The military budget for the current fiscal year is $517 billion. $517 billion. Now, that's not chump change, but that's $517 billion for our national security, compared to Bernie Sanders' $3.2 trillion for healthcare. What about Social Security? That gets, Republicans tied up in a wad. $1.25 trillion. That's not even half, folks. Social Security doesn't even account for half of what Bernie Sanders is proposing we spend on Medicare for all. This is madness. To put it in to put it in greater perspective, ladies and gentlemen, China has a budget of $4 trillion. That's how much they spend a year. $4 trillion. That is what their budget accounts for. They are the only country in the world that beats us in spending more money. $4 trillion. And that only beats us by a couple $100 billion. When you look at China spending $4 trillion, us spending $3.8 trillion, that, ladies and gentlemen, would mean, and you go back and look in history, that would make Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All proposal the single most expensive expenditure, the single most expensive national expenditure in world history. We would have spent $3.2 trillion a year on one thing: healthcare. He wants to spend over 90% of our budget already on just one thing. That is madness. I mean, does that not make you want to fall back out of your chair right now? $3.2 trillion a year for one thing? There is no way that we can afford this. It would practically, not practically, it would bankrupt our country. It would lead to the economic collapse of the greatest, most powerful superpower on the face of the planet. And if you don't believe me, if you don't believe these numbers, well, just ask my good friend Bernie Sanders. He knows exactly what I'm talking about. I agree with him 100% on this. You're probably confused right now. I'm picturing you guys having a very confused look on your face. Because I know it's there. I know this because, well, I know things. And you're supposed to be confused. Because Bernie Sanders can't get his story straight. This is what Bernie Sanders said back in 1987 when he was talking about a Medicare for all system here in America.
One of the points that we understand, and I think was reinforced that when we went to Canada, is that, at least as I see it, and I'm not an expert on it, but this is the way I see it. Number one, you want to guarantee that all people have access to health care as you do in Canada. But I think what we understand is that unless we change the funding system and the control mechanisms in this country to do that, for example, if we expanded Medicaid to everybody, right, give everybody a Medicaid card, we would be spending such an astronomical sum of money that, we would bankrupt the nation. So maybe you want to talk a little bit about that and why in Canada, under their national health system, you can have access for all people, and yet per capita, it is less expensive than in the United States.
Well, for one thing, you don't.
So, you can look in there. You can see now, even in that interview or that conversation, you can see he's trying to find some wiggle room. But he knows it and said it with great certainty that we, and I quote, we would be spending such an astronomical amount of money that we would bankrupt the nation. End of quote. That's what he said. That's what Bernie Sanders said. And he's right. We should believe him. Now, some of you are probably asking. You're probably thinking of a question in your brain. Probably asking yourself, well, if he knows this, then why is he trying to push it? Well, that's a two-part answer. First of all, Bernie has just chosen to pretend that the cost doesn't really matter. After 30 years of trying to come to an answer, he simply just decided to pretend that there's not a problem with the costs. That's what he did. He just simply ignores it. He doesn't talk about it anymore. And second, it goes back to what I've been saying all this time about what the main goal of Democrats and progressives in Congress are. They want to buy votes. That is it. Plain and simple. They want to guarantee an electoral victory by offering free health care to all Americans. They believe that that is the best option. They believe that will guarantee them electoral victory. It has not yet, because Americans are still afraid. Not enough Americans are willing to jump onto a socialized system, knowing good and well that for over a century we fought against, through war, this very concept of socialism and communism and fascism. It's going to take a little bit more than just putting the word free to convince us to jump over to socialism. But Garrison, I have Democratic friends, and they aren't stupid enough to get on board with a plan without having any way to pay for it. Well, I don't know your friends. But I think it would be safe to say that you're probably right. They aren't stupid enough to do that. However, they are naive enough to jump onto a plan without knowing how it will be fully funded. You see, Bernie Sanders has given a few ways to pay for the program, but not a single one of them comes close to covering the whole bill. But the way, you have to listen to him, the way he delivers his speeches, he gives an illusion that his proposals do pay for the entire bill. Let's just take a look at some of his proposals. If you go to his site, he has posted a 6-page document going over a few options, several options, to finance his Medicare for All program. And in the first sentence, this is very important because this goes into what I was saying and how he gives an illusion that he's paying for all this. This is what he says in the first sentence. Today, the United States spends more than $3.2 trillion a year on health care. Does that sound familiar, folks? By George, I think that's the same number that I said earlier. That's right. Medicare for All costs $3.2 trillion a year. Well, if we are already spending $3.2 trillion a year on healthcare, then $3.2 trillion a year for Medicare for All shouldn't be a problem. But the problem is, that's not accurate. That's not how the system of government works. That's not how budgets work. So, we're going to go by and look at some of these proposals. And ladies and gentlemen, prepare yourselves, because some of these are quite wacky. So, his first set of proposals, options to save families and businesses on healthcare expenses. He wants to institute a 7.5% income-based premium paid by employers. This would raise $390 billion a year. This is what employers would have to pay, 7.5%. This is what they'd have to pay on top of their taxes they're already paying already. 7.5%. Do their payroll tax. A 4% income-based premium paid by households. This would raise $350 billion. This is what you would pay. This is what's coming out of your check. 4%. You're getting a 4% tax increase, ladies and gentlemen. Everyone is, automatically, with this. And that would raise $350 billion. Savings from health tax expenditures. This is essentially removing a lot of tax breaks that employers use to help cut back the expenses of healthcare on their business. By cutting this out, it would cost it would save and create $420 billion a year in revenue. So that totals up to $1.16 trillion a year. Okay? Just those proposals. He wants to make the personal income tax more progressive. Now, mind you, this is under the title, Options to Make the Wealthy Pay Their Fair Share. First option is to make the personal income tax more progressive. This proposal would raise $180 billion a year. So essentially, he wants to raise the progressive income tax rates. Under his plan are the new marginal income tax rates for the top individuals. Top income earners would be 40% on income between $250,000 and $500,000, 45% on income between $500,000 and $2 million, and 50% on income between $2 million and $10 million. and 52% on income above 10 million. So basically we're raising it to nearly half and over half the income of individuals of the top 10%. 40%. That's insanity. 40% of their income. Anyways, they also would be taxing capital gains and dividends the same as income from work. And he would also limit tax deductions for the wealthy. He says wealthier households are able to take advantage of various itemized deductions that generally do not provide any benefit to lower income workers. Under this proposal, itemized deductions would be capped at 28% for households making over $250,000. In other words, for every dollar in tax deduction a high-income household could save, if for every dollar in tax deduction a high-income household could save at most 28 cents. This limit would replace more complicated and less effective limits on tax breaks for the rich. Now, remember that first proposal, that first option would create $180 billion in revenue, raising all those tax rates. He wants to make the estate tax more progressive, and I won't go into the details on that, but that would raise $24.9 billion in revenue a year. And when I saw this, I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. Republicans have been saying for a long time the progressive tax has just punishes success, and in my belief it does. We're accustomed to it, so we're not going to get rid of the progressive tax. That's just not possible. We're just got to live with it. However, if you thought, Republicans, that the progressive tax was a punishment for success, then your mind is going to be blown here, because he wants to establish a wealth tax on the top 0.1% of Americans. This would raise $130 billion in revenue a year. That literally means that because you're wealthy, you just pay another tax. It's literally a tax to say, yeah, sorry, you're wealthy, here's a tax. That is, it's I cannot feasibly I can't grasp that. I can't grasp on how that literally is not redistribution of wealth. It is literally a tax dedicated directly for wealthy individuals. That is exactly what it is. Now, he also wants to close the Gingrich-Edwards loophole and create parity for wealthy business owners, and that would raise $24.7 billion a year. So all of those proposals that I've named so far, just recently, have been would raise $361 billion. The final proposals would be to impose a one-time tax on currently held offshore profits that would raise $76.7 billion. He would also want to impose a fee on large financial institutions. Okay. $11.7 billion a year in revenue raised. And he would repeal corporate accounting gimmicks. That would raise $11.2 billion. And I won't go into the detail on those proposals, but that is the money that would raise. Those three proposals would raise $100 billion a year. Let's add all of those proposals together. Let's say this would never happen, but let's say by some off chance that Bernie Sanders got all of these options. He just some magical fairy just came in and said, Bernie, we're going to give it to you. We're going to give you everything you want. This only adds up to $1.6 trillion. That's only half. He still has 50% more to pay for. So, unless he doesn't have another way to pay for it, he's adding $1.6 trillion to the deficit. And that's saying he gets everything he wants, which we know he won't. So, getting everything he wants, he's adding $1.6 trillion a year to the deficit. So even after all of these different tax increases and implementations, he still can't afford it. And I don't normally quote Hillary Clinton, but folks, this is nothing more than a golden goose. It's not real. Stop falling for it. And let's say, magically, he finds a way to pay for all of this. Let's say, somehow, like I said, a genie comes and says, we're going to give you everything you want. We're going to give you a fully funded Medicare for All program. It's still a terrible service. I can tell you this. I'm not going to wait months and years for treatment for anything I get. I'm not going to push for a system that makes my grandmother have to wait a year for a hip replacement like they do in Canada. This is what we're heading towards, people, and Bernie Sanders knows it. How do I know that he knows it? Because the Canadians have told him directly to his face on his very own podcast. Just take a listen.
Drugs on affordability of prescription drugs is a major issue. It's not the only one. There is concern about waiting time, for example. Talk about that a bit, please.
So this is something that gets a lot of press, right? I know south of our border, and people talk about the wait times. So the first thing I think is important for people to understand is that Canadians do not wait for urgent or emergent issues. So, if people get seriously sick in Canada, they have a heart attack or a cancer diagnosis or whatever, our outcomes are excellent for those serious conditions, and we don't wait any longer than anybody else in the world for those important things. Having said that, we do have a problem with wait times for what we call elective or non-urgent procedures. So people who are waiting to see a specialist for a non-urgent issue.
Give us some examples.
So if I have a patient who has headaches and want the opinion of a neurologist about the management of their migraines, for example. Not because I'm worried that they have brain cancer. If I'm worried they have brain cancer, they'll get their MRI tomorrow, and the system will move very quickly. But if I have a patient who's got migraines and I need advice about how to manage it, they might wait several months to see a neurologist for a non-urgent problem like that, or non-urgent surgeries. The classic example being a hip or a knee replacement.
So how long will it take me in the
it depends on where you are in the country. Sometimes it's a few months, sometimes it's a year. In some places, sometimes it's been even longer than that people wait for a hip or a knee replacement. And I think that's totally unacceptable. I don't think that we should stand for it in our system. I think that there's no reason why people should have to wait. And what we have determined, those of us who study these issues and work on these issues, is that although those waits are a problem, they are not caused by the fact that our insurance plan is paid for by the government. The reason that we have difficulties with waits is because we have done a poor job of organizing the delivery systems of care.
There you have it. But real quick, can we first just acknowledge that Bernie Sanders does a podcast? I mean, it's pretty cool. But also, when you really think about it, am I paying for him to make a podcast or to govern? This is kind of a question I have. Anyways, you hear that, folks? You hear what just happened there? He just sat there and nodded his head. He nodded his head during this podcast. He just sat there. He didn't have anything to rebut. He had nothing to say because he's heard this all before. But once again, he just ignores it. So until he acknowledges these important issues, I am going to follow his lead and just ignore his proposal altogether. I think that is the best course for my blood pressure. We'll be right back.
T-Mobile's Unlimited now includes Netflix on Us. That's right, Netflix on Us. Get 4 unlimited lines for just $40 each, taxes and fees included. And now, Netflix included. So go ahead, binge on Us. Another reason why T-Mobile is America's best unlimited network.
All right, welcome back. It's the Art of the Deal, folks. Washington edition. We are seeing the president fall into his negotiating tactics in live time. He is working with Democrats, trying to get things done. But it's odd because the Democrats are criticizing him on it. They're mocking him. They're almost doing everything they can to blow up this deal. Here's how I see it. The president is a lion in the wild that has, for some strange reason, become very calm. And he's walking up to you, i.e. the Democrats. And you guys know how they tell you in these situations to not make any big sudden movements, or you might agitate or scare off the animal. Well, the Democrats are pulling out their BB guns and shooting at the lion's head. Like, why? I mean, it doesn't make sense. You have a chance to finally pass the DREAM Act, which has been attempted for decades. It has been attempted since Ronald Reagan was president. And you finally have a chance, and you're mocking, teasing, and belittling the one guy who you actually need to sign it into law? Like, Trump is trying to try something new. He's trying something new because he wants to make deals and accomplish things. He's from the business world, folks. He's not used to the stupidity of a Washington deal. Do you guys know what a Washington deal is? Here's an example of a Washington deal, all right? This is what a Washington deal sounds like, all right? The president comes out onto a podium and says, hello, everybody, hello. I just want to announce, okay? I want to announce that today we have made history. After speaking with the Speaker of the House, we have made a deal that we will discuss making a deal later this year. In the business world, you get specifics. Otherwise, there's not a deal. That's not what's given in Washington. It's always, we have made a deal to talk about making a deal in the future, yada, yada, yada. No one understands that. But yet, we accept it. But Trump's not used to that. He's used to business deals where there's specifics, a timeline. But anyways, he's trying to make deals and pass legislation by working with the Democrats. And he's trying to do it delicately so that he doesn't enrage his base any more than he has to. Because he knows he's going to enrage his base by working with Democrats. But he doesn't want to make them more ticked off than he has to. Okay? He's doing it delicately. But no! The Democrats are like, ooh, look, he's telling, look, he's becoming a Democrat. We've got Schumer, guys, over here. Look at this. We've got Schumer suddenly out of the clear blue sky getting caught on a hot mic in the Senate? He got caught on the hot mic on the Senate floor saying that Trump likes being he likes the Democrats. Did you hear this, folks? He said he likes the Democrats. He loves me. He loves all of us, but I think he really likes me. That's what he said. And then we got Trevor Noah mocking Trump for being praised for being bipartisan. Like, guys, really? I mean, it's just hilarious because the Democrats can't help themselves. They criticize the president for announcing the end of a possibly unconstitutional executive order known as DACA and say, Mr. President, if you kick out these dreamers, you're an evil monster. Then when he says, you're right, let's keep them, but I'm going to need your help to make this a permanent law. You come back and say, well, you got to look at this joker. Look at this joker here. Wow, aren't you a fool? Oh, I guess you think you're Mr. Bipartisan now, huh? That's what they come back with. I mean, it just goes to show that the Democrats aren't really serious about working together. Because if they truly wanted a bipartisan atmosphere, they would have been more welcoming to the president's support. Especially since he already showed good faith 3 weeks ago on the debt ceiling and Hurricane Harvey funding. He's showing a willingness to work with you. And you're just like, are you funny? I mean, guys, it's insanity. It's just insanity, guys. But that's all for tonight. If you haven't visited my online store, please do. And see what I have for sale, okay? It's GarrisonDouglas.com. Just go to the online store. There's a special collection of Dreamer support clothing, okay? These are Dreamer branded clothing, some showing your support for the DREAM Act and for our Dreamers. Proceeds from the sale of those specific shirts will go to help fund advocates of the DREAM Act, okay? And organizations pushing to get Dreamers to stay here in America. Also in the store, there are also hoodies for purchase, and they are quite comfortable, I gotta say. But thank you for tuning in, and I'll meet you all back here on Monday. Have a great night and a safe weekend.
Center for everything that is political and American. You're listening to The Garrison Douglas Show.